2018. First on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. So can we have a motion?
I move to approve the agenda.
A second, please.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, second on the agenda is approval of minutes. We do not have enough people here for the March 26th, but we do for the April 16th. So if I could have a motion for Mr. Boone or Mr. Eliff to approve the minutes or make any comments or suggestion of changes to the minutes of the April 16th meeting, please let me know.
I'll second.
All right, could you call roll, please?
Mr. Eliff?
Yes.
Ms. DiBiagio?
Abstain.
Mr. Boone?
Yes.
Mr. Gothard?
Yes. Thank you. First on the agenda is a public hearing to discuss case 2-2018, located at 5218 Beachmont Avenue. Mr. Drury, could you give a staff report, please?
Thank you. The applicant is Parkstone Capital LLC on behalf of Woodstone 4 Holdings, who is the property owner. The location is at 5218 Beachmont Avenue, and there are three different zoning classifications on the property: A, residence, single family; E, retail; and H, riverfront. The request is a zone change to EE, planned retail, for the purposes of constructing 9 apartment buildings. There's a mixture of units, numbers, and sizes in each of those, from 1 to 2 bedrooms, for a total of 246 residential units. There are 2 commercial freestanding structures on the property that would be remain, and then a third proposed would be new construction at 10,640 square feet, and then associated parking. The history on this site, in 1999 is when the existing shopping center that's there now was issued a zoning certificate and constructed. This was 56,200 square feet for the shopping center itself, and then the 2 outlot buildings. In addition to that, there is a variance for the freestanding sign. This was also granted in 1999. The sign that's out there is 30 feet tall, 30 feet 3 inches tall, for a total of 187 square feet. So that was the basis for that large of a sign. And then just over the years, just various permits for temporary tents, sign changes, and facade change. Prior to that was the infamous former El Rancho Rankin Motel. So this is a property map. This is the existing shopping center. This is Beachmont Avenue to get you oriented, Elston Road. And then this is right before you approach the Beachmont levee and the 32 interchange. This is an aerial view of the property. Again, the existing shopping center, the Remke Market here. This is a 2-tenant building that currently has 1 vacancy in the Starbucks, as well as this was a former Mexican restaurant. This is a signalized entrance at the Elston and the shopping center in Beachmont Avenue, a UDF, former BP, which is now vacant, and then another strip shopping center adjacent to the site in question. These are the 3 different zoning classifications on the current property. The yellow is the single family, the red is for retail, and then the green is the H riverfront. And the riverfront zoning primarily follows a floodplain area or floodway area, which there is a creek that runs through the property. And then the topography map. The site itself was cleared with the construction and flattened for the construction of the shopping center. There's a steep increase in grade toward the rear of the property, which we'll call the north side of the property. The properties up above or to the north, this is the Estates of Signal Hill subdivision, which is zone single family. And then this is the creek runs through here, so you can see the topography of the creek, which some of it was piped when the construction of the shopping center. And then there are various grades around the site. So this is the proposed site plan. Again, the 2 entrances to the property, one at the signalized intersection will remain. The second entrance is a shared entrance between this property and the property next door to the west, which is actually falls on the property to the west. There's a shared easement access agreement between those two shopping centers. So those two would remain the same. This is the existing two-tenant building and the former Mexican restaurant, which would remain the same. This is the proposed new construction for a commercial building, and then the apartments would be toward the north or toward the rear of the site in question, somewhat separated.
Your pointer's not working.
Oh, it's not?
I'm not seeing it on this. Is it working?
Well, it's working on my computer for some reason. Thank you for letting me know. We'll see.
Okay.
Sorry about
I
that.
think when you start talking about A, B, and C, it's going to
Well, I tell you what, I'll do it the old way.
sorry about that.
All right. So, sorry about that. I'll go back and then... All right, so this is Beachmont Avenue. The two entrances would remain the same. This is the signalized entrance, and this is the shared entrance with the shopping center next door. This is the existing two-tenant retail building, the former Mexican restaurant, and a proposed new commercial building here. The other buildings are all multifamily apartments, a mixture of 1 and 2 bedrooms. The proposal has somewhat of a rear drive to separate the commercial uses from the residential uses, and then the perimeter would be the best way to access the apartment community, but trying to provide somewhat of a separation between the two uses, but also joining them by pedestrian connections through the parking lots. There is a amenity area in 2 locations. There's a tennis club or tennis courts in this vicinity, and then the clubhouse and pool in the middle of the apartment area. I've had a total crash on my computer. That's what happened. So I might have to restart it if you'll bear with me. So where did put yours up? My apologies.
The joys of technology.
The joys of technology. So it's restarting. Can I put yours on there? Well, I'll go ahead with the presentation, and then if we need to go back to the slides, then we can do that. And then we'll have the site photos as well, once we get the presentation back up, but it's kind of spinning. Just shut it down completely. Yep, that's those 2 slides that we added. Yep. So, actually, Sam.
It's going faster now. People believe it.
To show you my age while we're waiting, I used to have the boards, phone cord, you'd pin stuff to, never happened to all this stuff, never happened.
Well, ironically, so we added 2 slides at the end. I think that
That's
is what, it's too large, and we should have just left it alone. So as far as the case history, this was heard at Hamilton County Regional Planning Commission on May the 3rd. Regional Planning Commission, and for those of you in the audience, if you'll follow along in your staff report, that's where I'm going. There's extra staff reports over by the desk. So this was heard on May the 3rd, 2018 by Hamilton County Regional Planning Commission. The Regional Planning Commission did approve the zone change request with 7 conditions. Most of those were related to zoning compliance. So the first, landscaping; the second, lighting; pedestrian connection was item number 3. Number 4 was regarding the right-of-way for Beachmont Avenue, which Hamilton County Thoroughfare Plan calls for 60-foot half right-of-way, 120 feet total right-of-way. Number 5, that all buildings comply with the maximum building height of the zoning resolution, which is 35 feet. These buildings are proposed at 37.5 feet. That bicycle parking spaces be provided in accordance with the zoning resolution, and then that signage comply with Article 5.5 of the zoning resolution. The agency reports that we received from the county agencies, the two of most substance were the county engineer dedication of the right-of-way, and then ODOT recommended a traffic impact study and also had concerns with the second point of ingress-egress that's shared with the adjacent shopping center. And the applicant is going to work with ODOT on keeping that, because we think it's important. And then Anderson Township Fire and Rescue had no objections. So we're going to try this one more time. This would just make more sense with pictures.
Yes.
I can export it to a PDF if the computer.
I think we're almost there at 85%.
There you go.
So the conditions that Hamilton County referred to regarding landscaping, the applicant has revised their plans, and the revised plans are compliant with the zoning resolution. So this is the landscape plan. They have added a streetscape buffer along Beachmont Avenue, as well as meet the minimum parking lot landscaping requirements. This is the the lighting plan. The foot candles have been reduced in areas. The only area that's not in compliance is the westernmost area, which the foot candle requirement is 0.75 at the property line. So that is the area that is not consistent with the zoning regulations.
That's right at the shared ingress egress area.
That's right at the shared ingress egress area. Yes, correct. I don't know if it's going to work or not. Bicycle parking, there was bicycle parking provided throughout, but not necessarily convenient to the commercial structures, so staff is encouraging additional bicycle parking at the commercial structures. We talked about lighting and the zoning resolution. So we'll see if we can't get some of the site photos. If not, we'll keep going on. So with the zone change, we're looking at zoning resolution compliance. We're looking at compliance with the Anderson Township Comprehensive Plan and other adopted plans for the township. So with the Anderson Township, well, here we go. All right, so now we're back to these are the proposed elevation drawings of the buildings, the apartment buildings per se. A mixture of building materials. Again, the proposal is for 3-story buildings, 37.5 feet tall, and the maximum height required or allowed is 35, but staff is recommending that the 37.5 be considered, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. So these are the site photos. This is looking at the current Remke from Beachmont Avenue, looking generally toward the north. This is looking at the building where Starbucks is located, and then the Mexican restaurant, former Mexican restaurant, is in the background. This picture is showing the difference in elevation. The Estates of Signal Hill is up behind the trees, and this is the corner of the shopping center. This is the adjacent shopping center to the west, where the parking lot connection is. This is just the area that parallels Beachmont Avenue. This is the entrance road to the delivery area behind Remke's. This would be in the same general location where the road around the apartment buildings would be located. Looking back toward Beachmont Avenue. So again, the items that we're looking at, compliance with the zoning resolution, which we have covered, the Anderson Township Comprehensive Plan, as found in the staff report and through Hamilton County Regional Planning Commission's evaluation, the future land use map identifies the site for mixed use, and while the proposal is not a vertical mixed use, there is a mixture of commercial and residential uses on the property, so staff finds that it is consistent with the future land use designation. Also, it's consistent with the housing chapter of the comprehensive plan, which encourages a mixture of housing types within the township. There are several sections in the people and housing initiatives that staff feels that this is compliant with. Again, it also provides more density to support the commercial, not only on this site, but next door and also in Mount Washington, up the hill on Beachmont Avenue. And this particular site was studied with a market study for our comprehensive plan update, which is late 2016, adopted early January 2017. But the comprehensive plan took several underdeveloped sites and did a market study to determine what the best use would score well as. And this site scored well for multifamily housing. It scored well just for mixed use in general. So this proposal is consistent with what our comprehensive plan identifies in Appendix B. Thoroughfare consistency, thoroughfare plan, again, they are identifying 60 feet of half right-of-way for Beachmont Avenue. With the township design guidelines, we're looking at site planning, which incorporates residential to the commercial to the larger regional network of trails. So there are sidewalks within the apartment buildings. They are connecting to the commercial structures, but we feel that there should be some more consistency there. But as far as also the overall layout, the commercial is focused more toward Beachmont Avenue. The residential is set behind the commercial, and we feel that it's very complementary to each other. Also, just site planning throughout that immediate area, there's a mixture of housing. There are the single family up in the Estates of Signal Hill, but it's somewhat removed from this because of the change in topography. There are condos across the street on Elston. There are apartments as you go east on Beachmont Avenue into the city of Cincinnati. And there's also single family once you go further up the hill. But we feel that this is very complementary to the overall uses in the area. Signage, staff feels that a new signage plan should be submitted, that the existing signage was more for a shopping center and not necessarily conducive to a mixed-use development. Again, we talked about the trails and walkways plan. Our long-term plan identifies a connection to the Little Miami Trail, so we think that pedestrian and bicycling connections are very important. And then the Township's Economic Development Committee, they also submitted a letter in support of this application for the reasons in the staff report. So staff recommends approval based off of the following conditions, which are up on the board in the staff report. We feel that it's consistent with the people and housing chapters of the comprehensive plan, the future land use designation of the comprehensive plan, and also the market study for the comprehensive plan. We feel it's compatible with the surrounding neighborhood and stabilizes the neighborhood by promoting orderly development and is compliance with the zoning resolution, except for those items noted previously. Number 3, about the health and safety of the neighborhood are maintained. The change is consistent with the market study, as we previously stated, and it provides an opportunity for the applicant to realize a reasonable profit, not necessarily a maximum profit. The 7 conditions recommended by regional planning, some of those have been addressed. the landscaping, the lighting plan has not fully been addressed, and the pedestrian connections have not fully been addressed. So staff recommends that the zoning commission, if they consider approval, they also consider carrying these conditions over, and these items be addressed in the final development plan review. Number 5 talks about the building height. Regional planning recommended that they comply with a maximum height of 35. The township recommends that a variance be granted for 37.5 feet for a couple of reasons. Both, these buildings sit behind the retail areas, so 35 feet, or 37.5 feet is not that noticeable from Beachmont Avenue. Behind them is the hill that's over 100 feet tall. A standard E zoning district, which is what the current shopping center is zoned, could actually be, buildings could be constructed up to 45 feet. With this being a planned district, the restrictions are actually less instead of what currently could be built there. So we feel that the 37.5 is not unreasonable. The architect for the project described the need for that height to get a better angle on the gables to make them to have a better residential appearance. Number 6 refers to bicycle parking, and then number 7, signage, which we talked about. Again, staff recommends that signage plan be submitted consistent with the township design guidelines, and then number 2, a circulation plan to address those items raised, the concerns raised tonight. So, be happy to answer any questions. I apologize for the technical issues with the PowerPoint.
Thank you. Mr. Elf, any questions of staff?
I had a couple for Paul. Let's see, I saw in your staff remarks that and I didn't see in the materials, I don't think it's there yet, that one of the reasons this scored high was because of potential connectivity to the regional bike trail. But
Yes.
there isn't actually, that I've seen, because it has to come off-site somewhere, we don't really have detail at this point on how that's actually going to work, do we? And are there, and I guess I'd add, and are there impediments to getting to the bike trail from this location? No, it kind of ends down by Speedway or whatever.
Yes,
down there.
I don't have an aerial that's to scale. So, oh my goodness sake. So, 32 is right up here. This is the estates of Signal Hill at access off of 32, right across from the Speedway that you were referring
Yeah.
to. That's where the Little Miami Trail is currently located. This is the Beachmont Avenue, just getting the approach up to the Beachmont levee. Funding has been secured to connect where the trail dead ends now to cross the river. So funding has been secured for bridge connection. So the township's long-range plan, trails plan, calls for a connection from Elston, and you would connect up to the Little Miami Trail on the south side of Beachmont Avenue. So the major hurdle was the funding for the bridge across the Little Miami River, and that has been secured.
Oh, okay.
We anticipate construction within the 2020, 2021.
So how would you see this development connecting, crossing
So-
Beachmont there by UDF and then
Yes,
catching it
the
there?
most likely connection would be to cross the street at the
Okay.
intersection, and then the township would construct a connection on the south side of Beachmont Avenue.
And that's where it's planned for
Yes.
today? Okay. You mentioned in the existing multifamily could be built at a higher height than what they're proposing. Do you know how many, did anybody look at, as it exists today, how many units could be put in there today?
As of right, 14 units per acre.
14 per acre?
That's our standard D. The E retail defaults to the D, which is multifamily zoning.
I think it's like 3,000 square feet
Correct.
per unit.
Right.
Do we know how many total units? And it's not
Yeah, I can
critical, I was just
go back to
curious.
the,
So it looks like some could be put in there almost today as is.
Approximately 238.
238 today.
Correct. And that's excluding that would be including the commercial area where the commercial buildings are proposed. So
Okay.
if it was all just multifamily.
But it wouldn't include the H district?
I did my calculation just using the entire 17
Oh, okay,
acres.
all right. Is my math right on this, that at the 3,000 per square foot, well, I thought it would be more like 166 units at 14.4 units per acre. Is the density they're requesting is 21.4 units per acre? Does that sound about right?
Yes,
And the requested density is quite a bit higher than what the underlying allows, right?
that is correct. Mhm.
Okay. There's a couple commercial buildings in the front that are going to remain. It looks like they're in the H Riverfront District. Did they get some
Yes.
special waiver to go in there or something?
We couldn't find that they were given a special waiver, so we think it was just the interpretation of the zoning inspector at that time, because there was such a mixture of, the majority of the site fell in the retail zoning district. That's our best guess. We don't have, it's an assumption on our part of how it was issued a zoning certificate, but it was issued a zoning certificate. It didn't go through a Board of Zoning Appeals process, or we didn't have the PUD at the time.
Okay.
But the township did issue the zoning certificate in 1999.
Okay, all right. Thank you. That's all my
All right,
questions.
thank you. Ms. DeBaggio?
Okay, Paul, I have one basic question dealing with the bicycle parking. You mentioned that section 5.3 that you would like to have more, as provided, if my math is correct, they've met the specifications of that section, but we would like to see more, you would like to see more, is that correct? And about how many more are you talking?
We want them more strategically placed, for one. They didn't provide necessarily their location for bicycle parking in apartments, and I don't know what their plan is. I think we would leave that up for the developer, whether it's, if the buildings themselves would have storage facilities or if they're outdoor parking. But I think it would make sense to have more at this particular location just because of the proximity to the Little Miami Trail, and especially strategically for these commercial structures that they're trying to attract. This is a regional trail, so if the restaurant's trying to attract cyclists or, whatever the other retail uses end up being, if they're geared toward bikers or, want to attract those to the facility, we think it's important for them to add more. I don't have a specific number offhand.
Okay, that's fine,
Mhm.
thank you.
Mr. Boone?
I'm just curious if at some point we'll get more details regarding, the overall design. Will that be at some future?
Well, if it is approved, they would have to show that at the final development plan approval, and it would be discussed there. If you have concerns tonight or have some ideas that you would like to see in their final development plan submittal, I think that's certainly, welcome feedback to the applicant.
Okay. I just think right now it looks, you could pick out any apartment complex from 1990 and it kind of looks just like that, so I'd like to be a little bit more.
Our design guidelines, as far as architecture goes, give recommendations of a mix of building materials and try to match some of the architecture in the area, but there's a big mix of architecture in the area, so I don't know that there's a good
I agree with
design
that
to
comment.
go off of.
Yeah. So we'll have an opportunity for input later. Okay, great.
Yes. Mr. Olive?
Paul, I had one more question. The density of it, at the final development plan stage, we'll be looking at that. At the preliminary stage tonight, we're looking at density. Is that something that can be changed at final development plan, or is that something that's locked in?
I think if you place a condition on it with the zone change, it's locked in with the zone change. And I think
Okay.
if that's a concern, that needs to be addressed at this level versus the final
I
development
think
plan.
so, too. I just was curious. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions of staff? All right. If the applicant would like to make their presentation, please. Please state your name, address, and affiliation to the case.
Thank you. My name is C. Francis Barrett. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Barrett and Weber. Our address is 1201 Mercantile Center, 120 East 4th Street, Cincinnati, Ohio 45202, and we represent the applicant, which is Parkstone Capital. The representative here this evening from Parkstone Capital is Mr. Tommy Mulkey. He's on your far right on the end of the aisle here, and he's available to answer any questions you may have about the particulars of the development. The consulting firm retained is Bear Becker. From Bear Becker, the project manager is Mr. Mark Rosenberger. He's right here in the front row. He'll be presenting in just a minute. Because issues were raised about traffic, the traffic engineer from Bear Becker is here, and that's Katie Dillenberger. Katie's in the second row, second from the aisle. And because of the issues with the landscape architect also from Bear Becker's here, and that's Alex Holt. And Alex is right here on the aisle. All of them are available to answer any questions you may have. The architectural firm retained is the Elevar Group, and that's Mr. Bob Zielasco. Bob is right here on your right, second from the end. And Bob is an excellent architect, great reputation, and he was retained because the appearance of this development, the attractiveness is of key concern to our client. Like to mention that a lot of homework has been done, a lot of preliminary work has been done. We started working on this about halfway through last year, number of meetings in the fall. We had a formal meeting on December 6th with the Planning and Zoning Department, and I'd also like to thank Paul Drury and his entire staff for all of their help and input and support and direction. We made the formal submission on February the 28th of this year, and then on March the 14th, we had the pre-development meeting downtown, which was chaired by Hamilton County Building Department. There were all of the county agencies represented, as well as all the township departments and agencies represented. And that turned out to be a very productive meeting. And again, Mark can tell you the input he received and how he implemented all the recommendations. On the evening of March the 14th, we had the open house where we explained it, of course, to the public. Township notified all of the surrounding property owners, and we received their input as well. We went in front of the Regional Planning Commission, as Paul mentioned, on May 3. We worked with the staff downtown as well. Staff report was very positive, very encouraging. Staff recommended approval. We had the unanimous recommendation of the Regional Planning Commission. We're most looking forward to revitalizing this site. This site needs to be revitalized, and it's something the township wants, and it's something that we want to do for the township. We believe that this site can be redeveloped very attractively, revitalized, and to be in the best interest of not only the township but the greater community. It's really difficult for me to improve upon the staff report that Paul gave. I think he touched all the bases, identified all the facts, all the basic physical facts, all of the agency reviews, all of the conditions, and all the recommendations. So not to belabor the point, I'm going to ask Mark to come forward and give you a little background on the technical aspects of the plan, unless you have any questions for me. Mark, would you take the stand, please, here?
Good evening. My name's Mark Rosenberger. I'm with Bear Becker, located at 209 Grandview Drive in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky. As Fran had mentioned, we had done a lot of homework in terms of where this site landed in terms of the structure of the apartment buildings located in the back, the use of the existing structures, commercial structures that are in the front, with the addition of a building C to add a little bit more commercial office retail component to it. I would like to point out to the commission that this site is it's constrained by quite a few factors. We have a creek running through the east and south area of it with a significant cut in the rear, and we do have a deep sewer that runs through the area that we had to avoid also. So this is kind of set up to be a responsible redevelopment of a parcel that's in distress right now. And the constraints of that footprint of the parking and the building is what we're staying within. We're not encroaching into any other hillsides or any influence of the creek whatsoever. So the traffic component will have to be studied as part of the final development plan. We understand all that. Getting back to the staff report that was generated, I'd like to point out a couple items. One item that's talked about is a comprehensive plan, the need for diversity in housing options, including multifamily, senior living options, and redevelopment options, while continuing to maintain the property values character of the existing neighborhood. This is an existing neighborhood. This is a great use. Also, the Skytop Pavilion Shopping Center was identified as a key redevelopment 2 years ago, so I want the board to take that under consideration. And also, the Township Economic Development Committee submitted a letter of support for this redevelopment. Our client, we recommend, we agree with the recommendations that Anderson Township staff has generated, the 5, along with the Hamilton County Regional Planning Commission conditions, the 7 that were approved by the Planning Commission, and then also the conditions recommended by staff in terms of the signage and the pedestrian circulation. I would like to point out we are requesting a variance on the building height, and we can certainly talk about that more if you have more questions about that. So with that, without going into major detail, because the staff report was pretty genuine and clearly written, we would just like to open up the commission if they have any questions for our team here, so, or just let the public come up and speak.
All right, thank you. Mr. Boone, any questions?
Just a couple. What are you looking at as a total project investment?
That I couldn't answer. I would have to resort to ask the owner to answer that question.
Okay. What's the expected rent per unit? Do you know that offhand?
You would speak on this behalf, and really, the rent's going to be what the market demands.
Right.
Can't give that answer just right now.
Okay. Is there any low-income tax credit financing on the deal?
No,
Okay. Are you going to accept any Section 8 vouchers?
none,
Okay. Any age restrictions?
none.
Okay. Okay. I think that's all I have right now.
Thank you. Ms. DiMaggio?
Question I had in terms of dealing with the building is the ones that are 3 stories, will they have elevators so they're more accessible to those who may have mobility issues?
Okay, I would need Mr. Zelasco, the project architect, to answer that, please. You can come up, Bob.
Yes, please. And if you could state your name and address and affiliation too, please.
Yes, I'm Bob Zelasco with Elevar Design Group. The address is 555 Carr Street, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45203. These were primarily designed as walk-ups, so there's no elevators in them right now. And we kind of worked with the township to decide whether we needed to go taller or whether the 3-story walk-up would work with the density that we needed to make the project move forward and keep the commercial integrated part. So no, not at this time.
Okay, while you're still there, I'm going
Okay.
to ask you another question. Looking at the site plan, I saw there were dumpsters. I may have missed it. Normally, it's something we run into. There doesn't seem to be a ton of dumpster pads. I'm assuming there's the correct number.
They're hidden under the trees.
That's well done. How are those being encased? How are those being hidden from view?
They would all be enclosed with dumpster enclosures, similar materials to the rest of so it integrated with the rest of the buildings.
Okay. The other question I have, I want to get back to that bicycle parking. I did note the 10 spaces that were in here. There are only 2 that I could find on here right now around the commercial. Would you be willing to add more, especially to the commercial? Because I'm assuming the residents don't want their spaces taken up by somebody coming off the bike trail.
Right. And I think Administrator Drury's comment that having possibly making the commercial aspect more accessible to, so you cross the street, you come up the hill and take advantage. So that, I think absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I'm done.
All right, thank you. Mr. Eliff?
Yes, just a few questions, and maybe this would be directed to Mr. Molk, if how do I say that? Mulkey, I'm sorry, Mr. Mulkey. So if you could come up, I'd like to learn a little bit more about Parkstone Capital and what that's all about. And the reason for my question is, when we have higher density development in Anderson Township or anywhere, what it is, it's a partnership, because nobody in this room is really worried about how nice it's going to be next year when it's built, but I'm worried about how nice it's going to be in 25 years from now. So when we're dealing with some developers that we know locally, we know they have a good track record, we know what they've built and stuff, and so I was really curious when I got our materials to learn about your company. And we have that opportunity tonight. So could you please tell us about Parkstone, your track record, your other projects, stuff like that? We'd love to hear about it.
Okay. Well, first off, Tommy Mulkey with Parkstone Capital. We're located at 116 Radio Circle Drive in Mount Kisco, New York. We're a private equity fund that has been around for about 10 years now. Started in 08, 09, so 9 to 10 years. We have focused on rehabilitating distressed assets. We've done it kind of all over the country. To answer your question on this and what it's going to be 10 years or 15 years down the road and reputations and all that, I mean, one thing I would like to say is it still is kind of to be determined whether we're going to do this ourselves or with a joint developer. We've talked to a number of people in town, a number of builders. Mr. Drury and others in his office have gotten us in touch with people. We're still looking at that. But as far as what we have done, we have rehabilitated pretty much all kinds of properties, whether it's office towers or shopping centers or we've done golf courses, storage unit complexes. We've done a lot of different properties, but you know, that's kind of what we like to do. We like to buy something that, you know, you can look at it and know that this is a good piece of property that just needs some work. I mean, this is obviously in a great area, and it's a great piece of dirt, but it's just going to take some work to get it back to something that looks good and functions properly.
Thank you. That's very helpful. So in looking at multifamily, which we have here tonight, have you done multifamily, and then do you hold those? How do you manage those? You know, a good multifamily development is all about the management. How do you guys handle that? Or is this just something you're going to build and then hand it off to somebody?
Well, so just to give you a little history, before I joined Parkstone Capital, all I did was multifamily development. So that's really my background. At the time, with that company, we had a large enough portfolio that we managed all of our stuff in-house. I agree with you 1,000%. The management of the property is what's key. Parkstone doesn't currently have a large enough portfolio of multifamily in-house to justify having our own staff, particularly because our assets are so spread out. So we contract third party. We would find a local third-party management company here, and we would engage them to help.
Okay. And have you done, I know you've done a wide variety of things. It's pretty neat. Have you done multifamily in Ohio?
No, I have not done multifamily in Ohio.
Okay. I've got a few more questions. I'm not sure if they're appropriate for you, so you can pass it along to who you wish. I did want to ask the architect a couple questions. Mr. Velasco. So you heard Mr. Boone mention the architecturals of this. I agree. These design could be something that's really exciting for Anderson Township. The design I see here today is fairly traditional. For example, if you would look at the multifamily building that's just up the street at the corner of Linwood and Observatory, fabulous-looking building, really great finishes. What's your thoughts on that kind of design working for this development?
I think all of this would work. We were responding to comments that we heard from the township and having more of a traditional and intentionally a bit generic because there was some unknowns in terms of how the project was going to move forward. So we were looking to satisfy the ground plane, if you will, of the township, to make them comfortable with the density, the layout, and that kind of thing. In fact, I think two of the first schemes actually was a more contemporary flat roof scheme.
Well, you're not the first person that said that to this board, so I apologize because you get mixed signals, but I've heard at least 3 people on this board say they like that. So I'm hopeful that if we go forward with this, that if you revise the market, I would love to see something like that because I think that would be long-term beneficial for us.
Yeah, and I appreciate, and I would add, and I've been warned not to talk too much, but I would add that this is a market rate development. It's not affordable housing. It's not very high-end. So the market that I think that, and I'm from the Turpin area and Anderson graduate, so I'm somewhat familiar with the community. So the market that when we were laying these out, the unit types and the style to some degree was for the working class, up and coming, not necessarily families, but probably more transient, maybe transient's the wrong word, but more up and coming career people that may not need 2 cars and that kind of thing. So that was the density and the scale that we were looking for. So I think the materials would reflect that in the end. The final development would reflect that in the end after more appropriate market studies were done. Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly. That's what I was hoping to hear as far as your tenant, what you're attracting, but I appreciate that you're forthright about that. I did have some questions about the retail component of it. Would that be you to talk about?
That's right.
What kind of tenant mix are you looking at out front? Who is doing the leasing for you? That kind of thing. And then I was curious also with why the grocery store would being removed, because that would be a great attractor for traffic and stuff. Can you talk about some of that stuff?
Well, just to be honest, I mean, it's really going to be what the market will bear. I mean, what tenants we can find. I would love to put the grocery store in what's labeled as Building C. That'd be great. If we had them there, we would love that. We think that we'll be able to get another restaurant at some point in the existing Building B that was a restaurant, so we're thinking that's going to stay. Starbucks still has some term on their lease. We'd love to keep them there. I think there's a number of complementary uses that could be in that small, it's 1,200 square foot space next to them. But for Building C, we would like to put up a building that could be divided into smaller spaces, but also could be rented as an entire, a single tenant. We're currently using NAI Bergman for leasing for this, and they do some, they also manage another property we have in Springdale. So I'm imagining they would probably be our leasing agent there too.
What is the deal with the grocery store? Is their lease up or something, do you know?
Their lease is up. I want to say they've got a little over a year, less than 18 months on their...
Do you know if they want to stay, or have they told you any of their plans?
We don't think they want to stay.
Okay.
But like I said, if we, maybe downsizing them into the Building C, it would be an option. Once this is approved, we could start having those discussions with them. Obviously, that would be a great use for
that would be
space.
Nice. I'll ask you a similar question I asked to Paul. Have you thought about the, which I think is important for this, the connection to the future bike path and stuff? Have you guys looked at that carefully?
Well, I will say I'm an avid cyclist, so I would love that. I'd love to have as many parking spaces as people will bring bikes out. So yeah, we're all in favor of that.
Have you looked at it carefully at all as far as where they would connect and that sort of thing?
Well, I think they advised us, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that it was simpler for us and for everyone that this entire parcel would be the single zoning
Okay.
of EE.
Okay, I get it. And the last question is your construction timing, if this is approved, after your final development plan, and you've got probably a lot of due diligence to do and stuff like that. Once it's approved, are you going to build this in sections? What comes first? When are the amenities built? When's the retail going to be built? How's all that work?
Well, the way I would picture this going, and as you said, I mean, there's a lot of due diligence that we'd have to complete prior to, but the way I would like to do this, I would prefer to do it all as one phase, and everything go up at one time. That's always the easiest. It's better for the residents, less noise. I can't guarantee that's going to happen. We have to look at what we think by the time we get to approved sets of plans, what we think the market demand is going to be, how many units in a year can get absorbed. You don't want, obviously, to have, 150 units sitting vacant for a year if it's going to take them, for 2 or 3 years for this project to get absorbed. But what we would do is we would section this thing off and phase it. So if you did phase it, we would do what's the eastern side of this property first. You want all your amenities in at the beginning, and you want to get everything that's together as much as you can built at one time, and then you can section off, fence off so that you don't have construction people getting in the residential areas, all that. You want to be able to clearly separate that and then do the second phase. This project, I don't see any way it would ever go more than just splitting it in half, doing 2 phases.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I've got a couple of site questions. See on the site plan, there's really no dumpster enclosures for the retail or the commercial aspect? What's the long-term or?
There are
for that?
dumpsters located on the north side of what the main commercial drive is located. That's strategically located so that the garbage trucks can get in and out. It's hard to locate them in the existing, right now, if you've been out there, the existing, it's really not conducive to where they got their dumpsters right now. So they're located at the north end of the main commercial drive for those areas.
Okay, so they have the commercial has to cross the commercial drive to access their
Yeah,
dumpsters?
and those are done in the off hours mostly.
Okay. Except for Building A, which then also has to access across the sidewalk, right, the pedestrian way?
Yeah, well, we're going to, during the final development plan, that will be further refined. That won't happen.
And then, really, I don't see any pedestrian access onto the commercial areas.
And that was noted,
sidewalks too.
in the staff report. We will abide by that. We will show that. Once the final development plan is developed, more refined sidewalk connectivity between A, B, and C, and the main driveways, and which we already have, and the residential component will be part of that final development plan.
Okay. And then the site landing plan shows some of the fixtures are a 25-foot pole and a 2-foot base, which puts them 3 feet above the zoning of 24. Is that going to be modified to bring them down to the 24-foot mountain?
Yes.
I've been able just to rent it on my own, and right now I have 3 vacancies. I've hired a commercial real estate person to try and rent these, and the problems we have is we get the kickback of blight. We're in a blighted area. What's the matter? That center is empty. I don't think it's ever been more than 50% rented at any one time since around the early 2000s when it was built. And it's even gotten worse since they continually lose tenants. They lost the wing place, the health center moved out, the health food place moved out. Remke, you were talking about the grocery. If you've been in there, they've cut the place in half. It's not the full store that it was. And the real problem that I'm having, and actually Remke is having, is the homeless. And if you'll check the police reports, every day we have to call about the homeless that are living under not the Little Miami Bridge, but under the Clough Bridge there. And they're out in the middle of the road, and they stand in the middle of the road, and then the police get called, and they actually don't know what to do. I mean, I'm trying to work on it myself to try and get the people help. They seem to like to live there. and they've had skirmishes inside of Remke. They have harassed tenants of, customers of my tenants, and, threatened them by cutting their throat. I'm going to cut your throat, type thing. And so the homeless is a real problem there, and it's considered by people who come to look to rent as a blighted area. And it's very difficult to rent here, and we need some type of improvement. And you were talking about, let's see, what else I got on my notes here? I guess I'm just in favor of this. We need a change there. Like I said, this has never been rented over 50% since the early 2000s when it was built. And you can see how the tenants have moved out of there, and it's certainly affecting me at my shopping center. So, any questions?
Any questions of the commission?
So you've had that little center there for a while. Why do you think the retail's been such a failure here,
Well,
even from the beginning?
Well, I think the center's been mismanaged. I did not approach their tenants, but I actually got 4 of their tenants who approached me because of mismanagement of the center, and that's well before these, it's sold like 4 times, and their businesses, which I have is Subway, which was there, and Great Clips was there, and the nail place was there, and their businesses, they're real happy. As soon as they moved out along the road there, they doubled their sales. Subway doubled their amount of sales, and Great Clips doubled their cuts and everything, and they're really doing well there. All my tenants are doing well. I just can't bring in the new tenants. And I tell them, I said, talk to my tenants I have there, and truthfully, I also own the building next to, which I'm having a terrible time, next to UDF. And I gave that to a realtor too, and I bought that one, it was a ½ acre on the corner there, and then from Susan Becker, I bought an 1.5 acres. So I've got 2 acres on that corner there to develop, and I get nationals, and they just, because of Skytop, they won't come in there, and it's a signalized place, corner and everything, and they won't touch it because of Skytop. So I'm very much in some type of change to that area.
Great. I've got a couple questions for you.
Okay.
Would you be willing to participate with the applicant and ODOT on improvement of that shared sort of access drive? And
Well-
what could be reconfigured to improve traffic flow and safety?
Well, that's kind of a strange situation. If you'll check with the police, they widened that, 10 years ago or something, and gave us a turn lane into there. And we don't have accidents there. If you check with the police, the accidents are at the signalized entryway there. I hate to cut down on the size of the opening because it seems to work now.
Well, I think really it's you participating with the applicant and ODOT on what is the proper solution for traffic flow.
Yeah,
And
as long as there is the proper idea, I can agree with, because they come up with some, some weird type things sometimes,
then
all of them want to tell us how to run our business, but a lot of them don't know how to run a business. Excuse me.
That's right.
We can work with Mr. Ellison. I can show you that.
Great.
Yeah, and I contacted Tommy very early, didn't I? I said, I'd like to work with you. But when I first heard about that, I called him up, and, probably 4 or 5 months ago. And as you see, I worked with, when Skytop was built, the 2 centers looked, I put new facades on mine, and I asked, who's the developer? Jeff Anderson. He said, oh yeah, we'll tie those together, and so my colors are the same and everything is, to tie those 2 centers together.
And if this development goes forward, do you have any plans to do any renovations of your center?
Well, I always try and do something. Unfortunately, my wife passed away 1.5 years ago and put me well behind on my maintenance type thing, and so I'm trying to get caught up on that. So it's, tell your wife you love her every day, man. It's tough.
right.
After 46 years. I hate it.
Sorry to hear that, but thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else like to speak in favor? Yes, ma'am. Please. That's okay, yes. Again, please say your name, address.
My name is Carrie Smiley, and I'm at 2336 Elston Road, 45230. I'm just going to read my statement if that's okay. I, as an Anderson Township community member who resides close to the proposed development, understand that there needs to be change and a project that brings value to the developer, to Anderson Township, and especially to the public in the local community. However, I feel that larger units and a significant mix of owned units rather than just rentals would be more beneficial to the area. Ownership brings a more invested resident, those who take a higher level of ownership in our community. The number and type of units proposed represents an extension of the troublesome development pattern in the Beachmont corridor immediately east of the property. One that is marked by an oversaturation of multifamily developments that over time have spiraled downward with disinvestment and a disengaged transient population. A development with ownership quality units, multi-bedroom condominiums or townhome-style units, similar to recent nearby development on Elston Road, offer more hope that is to this extremely dense neighborhood and hopefully will not suffer similar decline and may in fact become a building block for reinvestment in the area. I guess to sum up, I would appreciate if the board and the developer would consider making some of these units ownable properties rather than just rentals, and maybe make them less dense. I also want to say I really appreciate the board. I really feel like you're speaking for us and you care about what's going to go in there. Mr. Is it Elif? Elif. I appreciate the questions that you were asking. I also have some questions for the developer. Can I ask?
No, ask to us.
Ask you? Okay.
And then we could always re-ask, please.
Okay. And I think you may have mentioned this, that the plan that they decide on, will it be written so that they have to provide tennis courts and the pool and the clubhouse? Like, that isn't something that they could start the plan and then decide part of the way through, oh, it just won't work out, and then drop it out?
So to answer that, part of the final development plan would be really what they have to build. At this stage, it's just really understanding the rezoning, and Mr. Drury, if I'm misstating, to see if it wants to go forward as far as the rezone, and then the final development, we can look at those amenities and make sure they're part of the overall plan.
Okay.
Okay.
I did have a question. I know this is Anderson Township, so is this Forest Hills School District?
Yes.
Okay, because I know sometimes there can be a little, on the edges, it could be CPS, but it is Forest Hills School.
Pretty sure it's all Forest Hills.
You're pretty sure, so not for sure? Okay,
is. Okay.
it's Forest Hills School. Okay, and then I was wondering about the lighting. Is this going to be more lighting than is there now? Or the same or less amount of nighttime lighting? Because that's something that local residents, I'm sure, would be concerned with.
Yeah, best of my knowledge, we don't know the existing foot candle levels that are there. All we are gauging is against the zoning resolution and how it applies to that as far as, lighting levels at the property lines and then height of those fixtures on the property. Okay, so
that
that's
is
all
not,
we can apply.
that's not something that can be determined.
So the existing shopping center was built prior to our current lighting regulations. Our current lighting regulations are much more stringent than previously. At the property line, if it is abutting a residential area, it needs to be 0.1 foot candles, which is dimmer than a full moon. And then adjacent to commercial area, it can be 0.75, which is actually less bright than most streetlights. So
Okay.
We measure lighting at the property line, foot candles at the property line. And so the plan that was up on the screen, which I know is hard to read, is their proposed lighting levels. All of it was in compliance except for the shared entrance between the two shopping centers.
Okay. So it doesn't really answer whether it's going to be brighter or not. We don't know that. Okay. And then I was also wondering if more green space could be put in there. I mean, I saw in your picture somebody walking a dog, but where are those dogs going to go other than the little bit of green space? Like a dog park, a human park worked in there? Like if you make this a walkable community, I think that that's something that we don't have already. You know, I love the idea of mixed retail in with it and walkable community and access to the bike trail. I think that that's something that people are looking for now. So I was just wondering if that might be something that can be added, more green space, park areas, trees.
We can ask the applicant sort of afterwards, okay?
Is it okay I'm still asking these
Yes,
questions?
that's
Okay.
fine.
And are the floor units handicap accessible? I know that they said they were walk-ups, and I think that was iffy about elevators in them, so I was just wondering if at least the floor units are handicap accessible.
You know, based on the building code and things, there's different types. So under the building code, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's been a few years, but, you know, so many units have to be accessible or be able to be made accessible. Maybe not day one, but they can be converted readily and easily into an accessible unit. Of course, with everything being walk-up, chances are most of those would be on the first floor. Is fair statement? Thank you.
Okay. And I just want to say that I think your suggestion of that apartment building on Linwood and Observatory would be a wonderful addition to that area. So, that is it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak in favor? Okay. Now, if anyone would like to speak opposed, please, again, state your name, address, and the affiliation to the case.
My name is Tony Giglio, the address 5073 Signal Hill Lane, 45244. I live just to the north of the proposed development. In fact, I'm one of the folks that fall within that 100-foot range of the proposed development. I'm here not only on behalf of myself, but also on behalf of the Signal Hill Board. So I wanted just to talk a little bit about where I stand, and that is, I think there is an opportunity here that exists. I don't think that the opportunity that we've been presented is the right opportunity for a number of reasons. First off, density. I think we have too many residential units in too small a space. I think you brought that point up earlier, that the ratio is too high for the space. Also, I think there's far less commercial development for this space than I would like to see. We have 9 buildings of proposed apartments, and we have 3 buildings of proposed commercial space. I think that mix needs to be higher. And that can be done a number of different ways. You can have residential units on the top floor and retail on the first floor. There's all kinds of different ways that this could be tackled. We've heard a couple of times about the transient population that exists up toward Mount Washington and the Beachmont corridor. My fear right now with the current design that we have and the comments that we've heard from the developer, that's what this is going to end up becoming. We've talked a little bit or heard a little bit about there's no target market. We keep hearing that whatever the market is going to bear. We don't know what the rents are going to be. We know they're going to be 1- and 2-bedroom units. There's currently, according to Mr. Drury, there's no limitation on the number of people that can live in a 1- or 2-bedroom apartment building. You could, in theory, have 6, 8, 10, 12, 15 people in a 2-bedroom unit in this development, which it's something that doesn't fit with the community. And to that point, in the Anderson Township plan, It talks a lot about the growing need for diversity in housing options, including multifamily, senior living, redevelopment options, which are all things that I would agree are needed. However, what's not being addressed is continuing to maintain property values and the character of the existing neighborhoods. You have an existing neighborhood 100 feet away, and everyone thinks it's okay because there's a 100-foot wall. I can stand on my deck and I can look down on the rooftop of Remke. I don't want to look down on the rooftop of 37.5-foot tall apartment buildings. I'm sorry, it's not what I moved to Anderson Township for. I didn't move to Anderson Township to have transient apartment, 1- and 2-bedroom apartment buildings 100 feet away from my property line. That's not acceptable in my opinion. I think a lot of work needs to be done on the plan before it's approved. We've heard about, can the building be more contemporary? It looks a lot like Turpin Woods right now. If you drive down Clough Pike across from where Mercer and I can't think of the Newtown Road, whatever that is, that's what this looks like to me. There are 3-story walk-ups. A little bit, I want to bring up too, because Mr. Elif had asked a little bit about the owner of the property. I'm also a real estate broker. I'm licensed in 4 states. I work with a lot of private equity funds, purchasing mostly single-family homes, but also purchasing commercial properties. And what I can tell you about a private equity fund, when they purchase a property similar to this, they're looking to get the biggest return on that property they can. So when they buy this and we talk about, can there be more green space? Can there be a dog park? The short answer to that is no, because it's not a revenue generator for them. They want to take this space, they want to increase the return on the investment as high as they can, and turn around and sell it for as much money as they can sell it for. They want to take a depressed property, which this clearly is, and turn that depressed property into something that's worth 30, 40, 50, $100 million. And that's the ultimate end game for private equity funds. We have private equity funds in Cincinnati now that are doing this same type of things. Someone had made a comment earlier that this is a great area. It is a great area. Again, one of the reasons I moved into a house that pushes $1 million is because it's a great area, and I want to keep it that way. One of the other items that hasn't really been talked about or questioned or no one has brought up, what is going to be the impact on the schools? This is in Forest Hill School District. So if you have now 246 units, and take whatever number you want. Let's say there's 1 kid in each one, or a half. Let's say there's 115 kids. What impact is that going to have on Mercer Elementary? What impact is that going to have on Nagel? What impact is that going to have on Turpin High School? I don't know that people have thought about that. If I were looking to get into one of the top 10 public high schools in the state of Ohio, and I could get into an apartment for market rent, and again, we don't know what that is. Is it $700? Is it $500? Is it $1,200? Where I could get into a top 10 public high school and not have to be a property owner, I think that's where I'm going, right? So what is going to be the impact there? When we talked a little bit about the bike trail connections, and that was addressed to some degree, and I think that there is, again, another good opportunity. What I would say is I'm not sure that a lot of people are going to come off the bike trail and ride all the way to the end of the bike trail to stop at a restaurant. Oh, wait a minute, there is no restaurant there. Oh, yeah, so they're not going to be able to do that. So again, until we have a reason for people to ride up there by increasing the commercial development in the area, I don't know that you're going to get people there. I think it's a great romanticized vision of what could happen, and I'm thankful to hear that the bike trail is going to get a bridge across the Little Miami so that it connects everything else and can ride out to Trenton, Ohio if you wanted to. That's great to hear. The proposed use does not really stabilize, in my opinion, the estates of Signal Hill. It has a reverse effect, and I think that's been talked about already. For me and for the residents of Signal Hill Estates, This is a quality of life issue for us. And I would just ask that before you make a decision on granting the proposed zoning change, that you take into account those residents that live in the estates of Signal Hill who are going to be the most impacted by that. There's a lot of history with this particular piece of property. Jeffrey Anderson developed it. There's the mix of old established homes in the estates of Signal Hill, and there are a lot of new homes in the estates of Signal Hill. In fact, 2 lots were just sold recently, and 2 new houses are going to be built. That leaves us with about 3 lots undeveloped in the estates of Signal Hill, which is great. There was a house that was built probably 3 years ago, and another one that was built probably 2.5 years ago. So we're seeing finally that development take hold, and we, as the homeowners of the estates of Signal Hill, in January took over the Homeowners Association from Jeffrey R. Anderson. We also came to an arrangement with Anderson Township where we now have our streets dedicated because we worked out giving money to Anderson Township for the bike trail because we want to embody that. So again, it is a quality of life issue. An opportunity does exist for something here. I would just implore you to have the plans redone for something that really could put this 17-acre parcel on the map. Again, because what's there now doesn't do it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else like to speak opposed? Yes, sir.
My name's Prescott Bigelow. I live in Signal Hill as well.
Could you state your address, please?
I'm not sure I'm going to do any of this correctly,
Yeah, if you could just state your street address.
nor did I hear very well,
Okay.
so I hope I'm not repeating anything.
Sir, just a
But-
second. Could you please state your street address?
I'm sorry?
Your street address?
Your street
Oh,
number, what's your house number?
5079 Signal Hill.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Where do I start? The reason most of us live in Anderson Township as opposed to Cincinnati is because it's quiet, safe, clean, you have plenty of room. It's a nice place to live. I've been here 32 years. I've enjoyed 32 years of Anderson Township. I came back from being out of town a little while and saw this. I was flabbergasted. I couldn't believe that Anderson Township would allow something like this to go on. To me, and everybody in our neighborhood, it's just going to create a mass of overcrowdedness. Traffic on Beachmont, 32 is already a mess. Clough Pike's a mess. Beachmont's a mess in the morning and the afternoon. It's just going to add to the problem, if you ask me. So that's one thing I'm skeptical about. The other thing I'm sort of, and incidentally, prior to this, a few of us up on the Hill said that something had to be done. The shopping center was a mistake from the beginning. It's been a bust. But why not have a nice village atmosphere with townhouses where people own the property instead of having one-bedroom apartments with God knows who's going to be there? I just think it's opening Pandora's box, but yet it could be a feasible situation if it was planned differently. Make a park area in the middle, the outside, but two-bedroom apartments, and as you go back, more expensive apartments, I mean, not apartments, excuse me, townhouses, some with garages, some without, so that they have a price range in a nice neighborhood. So, and one of the things that I think has to be done, which is a little out of the zoning part, is that back hill needs to be addressed no matter what they do, because it's continued to erode and wash away. If anybody looks at that pipeline, you can see where concrete held it underwater. It's sticking out in the middle of God knows where. So I think that ought to be, a lot of things need to be considered, I think, before they start building a place for masses of people to go in every different direction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. With that, we'll close the public hearing. Oh, yeah. Would the applicant would like to make any statements based on what you've heard? And I guess one question about the density sort of came up during the other public, so if you want to address that, that'd be helpful too.
I'd like to say we're flexible. We've tried to work as best we can. We're open to any suggestions. The plans you had before you this evening evolved over time in consultation with your professional planning staff. I would note that the plan is fully consistent. That is a proposed land use plan. Proposed site plan is fully consistent with a comprehensive plan for the township. You heard the staff report. We're zoning compliance, consistency with thoroughfare plan, consistency with all of the recommendations of regional planning, consistency with everything proposed by the staff. We get in the final development plan stage. We're certainly amenable to having the design criteria for the buildings given a fine-tooth comb review. In terms of Signal Hill, I appreciate the concerns of the neighbors, but there's a tremendous physical separation here, which you don't have in land use and zoning almost anywhere in greater Cincinnati, with the elevation separation and the complete separation of neighborhoods. I mean, this property is oriented toward Beachmont Avenue, and its character will be consistent with the character of Beachmont Avenue. We're well separated from Signal Hill. You don't have a separation anywhere that I've ever seen as great as this in terms of topography, elevation, and physical features. So we understand their concerns, but we believe that what we're doing is in the best interest of the township, and again, we're flexible. So we're open to any suggestions and comments, recommendations you may have.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. If you would ask it to the commission, please. Okay.
And this may be for Mr. Drury, I'm not sure. It involves what the next steps are. So if the zoning change is approved this evening, does it go forward with the current plan, or is it something that can be massaged and changed to include some recommendations or suggestions or changes moving forward? Because I think that's kind of a critical piece.
So the zoning commission is a recommending body to the township trustees who have the ultimate authority to change the zoning of a property. So the zoning commission's recommendation will be forwarded to the trustees, and the trustees would make a decision whenever they hear the case, whatever the outcome of this meeting is. Then the trustees make a decision to change the zoning or not change the zoning. If it moves forward, the zone change is approved, the final stage of the process is a submittal of what we call final development plan. That is reviewed by the zoning commission, only the zoning commission, not the trustees. And the zoning commission their role is to ensure that their final development plan is consistent with the decision of the trustees.
Okay. So there is...
And the final development plan is attached to that property. So if there was any change down the road that was not consistent with the final development plan, it would go through a series of public hearings again.
Right. So thank you for clarifying that, because I think, again, it's important that if there's a zoning change, it's not predicated on the current plan. Is that my understanding?
There are aspects that are predicated on the current plan, yes.
Aspects that are predicated, so
yes.
Number of units, density, those kinds of things. If there are, I don't know if the right word is objection, but if there are conditions that this committee would like to put on the zoning change, they could do so?
Yes.
Is that my understanding as well?
They can place conditions on their decision.
Thank you for allowing me to ask that question. I forgot to do it before.
All right. Any additional? Okay, with that, we will close the public hearing and discuss amongst the commission. So we'll start with you, Mr. Boone.
Well, I think we all have some design concerns that hopefully we can address later. And I assume that we'll be given relevant input on those concerns. I think we've heard it here, and certainly we've expressed it up here on this board. Paul, if this is approved, the number of units, I think, just clarify what was just asked, is unless we change it from, what is it, 246? Right now?
Yes.
Okay. So if we approve this, that number is the number moving forward, correct?
Maximum.
Maximum. Could go down,
Correct.
not likely, but could. Okay. All right.
Okay. Ms. DiBaggio?
Just so I have a little more clarity, how many units are, if the zoning were to not change, I'm sorry, we had enough numbers go back and forth that my notes are a little confusing right now, let's just put it that way. We're talking about 246 units if we do the proposed zoning change. Approximately what was it if we do not approve the zoning change? And I know
Let me
it's
do some
approximate.
calculations.
I know it's approximate.
Can I come back to that? Let me do some calculations real quick.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
I guess the comment that I would have on that is that I think it's a great plan. I'm not 100% convinced that it might be the right plan for that particular location. I want to see something done. I really want to see something done there. I would love to see that, similar to what one of our residents mentioned, more of a village idea in terms of there be a grocery store. Someplace, I personally am thinking that our senior citizens would have a place that they can go and they could walk to the grocery store, they could walk to a restaurant, they could do something to that effect. I'm not talking senior housing necessarily, because I think the young urban professionals would enjoy that as well. I would like to see something a little more on that line, maybe not as densely populated. And I'd like to see a little green space. You know, Anderson Township, we kind of focus on, let's get more green space. And yes, it's surrounded by some, but I'd like to see a little bit more in there.
Great. Anything else?
No,
Okay, thank you.
until I get my answer from
Yes,
Paul.
Mr. Eliff.
Okay, well, Paul, jump in when you get that number. Go ahead.
So the one number I don't have, we have the 17.894 acres for the total site.
How much is?
I don't have the separation, the breakdown for what the commercial is versus what the,
Right.
so if we use that 17.894 acres, which includes where the commercial is, as of right, they would be able to put in 259 units.
So
But that would be no commercial, that's the entire site.
So if you ballpark it, if you look at that site, it's about half E and about half H, so just take that number and divide it by 2. That's going to ballpark what they could do today. Didn't mean to
I don't
speak
know
for
if
you,
that's a
Paul, but-
fair, I don't think that's a fair.
No. What do you think the breakdown
I
is?
mean, we can try to measure it on cages, but it's just, it's a very, it's a
about a third,
guesstimate,
maybe.
yes, it's a,
So, okay, so I was liberal in favor of the... Sorry.
so, I mean, that's, I don't have the breakdown of the two different.
Some could be built there, certainly, under existing.
Right.
We don't know the exact number. So, yeah, it's a tough case because it's certainly a good amount of planning. We heard the staff report, plan after plan shows this is a great place for higher density residential. Retail has failed there, and I will say I think that's a design problem. I know a mirror exact of this center elsewhere that has equally failed. It's too far off the road. People don't know what's going on. So, you know, it's not our fault. It just didn't work. But that's a strong indicator that there's a problem with retail there. So what are we going to do? I really think that for the ask on the density, which is significant, I think, I don't think we're getting, in my opinion, an exciting plan, certainly one that I'm not excited about. Unfortunately, I do really appreciate the effort, But when you come out of the box with a significant ask for additional densities that, based on what I sketched up, isn't really even close to what's allowed, it needs to be something that really pops in a place I want to go ride my bike down to and hang out. And I did appreciate, and this is the first apartment complex I've heard of speak about where they didn't say these are going to be luxury apartments with, all the amenities. So I really appreciate that that was put out there because, that is good information for us. But that's, I guess, not what I was hoping to hear about this. And then lastly, I am concerned about the ownership structure. I really appreciate, I don't know equity firms or how they work, except I have had one personal experience with them, and I kind of do agree with the comment that, and there's nothing wrong with this, this is a good thing to make a lot of money, but that's going to be the focus of this project, is to squeeze out every dime, and that's why we see the density ask way high on this. So I would love to see a redesign of this, and I would even support high density for sure if I get a really exciting product. And I think we've heard several of us up here say, this product looked like it, and again, I'm sorry that this is the feedback you got before. I just differ with it. This product does not look exciting at all. It looks really tired right out of the box, and I don't see this board going out of its way to encourage that. With that being said, I really like the idea of higher density there, and maybe you guys can go rework something. I don't know, but right now I guess I would love to be in favor of this, but I'm not right now. Okay, that's it.
All right, thank you. I guess my thought is, it is a very high density use of the parcel. I do believe moving the retail out, Beachmont is going to sort of rejuvenate that, knowing you have a population behind that too, okay? So that has some value. I would prefer, I think, keeping the building height at 35 feet across, add zoning, because more contemporary sort of design of the buildings can accommodate that 35-foot height. And also, I don't want to put an additional height on building C that's allowable. So even if we do allow the 35 and a half, I'd like to see building C limited to 35 feet in height, because it is close to the part, to Beachmont Avenue. As far as the use, yes, it does need to be revitalized. So, how as us as a commission, see that revitalization and how it goes forward, knowing that this is in front of us, I think we have to look at. So, with that, if I need to stall for calculation time, Paul, let me know. But
Well, we can estimate. I think it would be better to have the engineer to come back up if you're
yeah, if
wanting
you have an
more
idea of how
design.
much acreage is.
Because of where the zoning lines are located, I guess.
Right.
Can't do that right now.
Yeah.
We're taking the entire parcel, or that's what I'm using, the entire parcel. If the entire parcel is used, that was 17.89, it would be 259 units.
So with that, if someone would like to make a motion to either approve or deny the rezoning to move on to the township trustees?
And there are options too here. If you are open to different options and want to continue, if you do want to do that, I would ask you to reopen the public hearing.
Okay.
If you want to make a decision, then obviously you can do that, and then that decision goes to the trustees for recommendation.
I think we've got concerns about obviously we've got concerns about the design, but I also think this is a wonderful opportunity to redevelop a blighted property, and I think we've been waiting a long time to see this happen. We're going to have an opportunity later, I think, to address some of the design concerns. They've got a right to develop as is. I'm guessing 160, 170 units. I don't know. We don't know the specific number. But, frankly, we can't really stop them from developing some level of rental units there. So we're really, I think, debating, do we want to allow them to have an additional 70 units on site? The fact is, they could eliminate the commercial portion and still do 200, they could do more units than they're proposing. So I think, given the fact that we will have an opportunity later, I mean, we're really just debating the zoning change today. From a design standpoint, I think we're going to have ample opportunity to address the concerns that I think we all have. So, with that said, I would be glad to entertain or put forth a motion to approve case 2-2018 Anderson, located at 5218 Beachmont Avenue, to approve a zoning change from A residence, E retail, and H riverfront to EE planned business district to include staff recommendations and Hamilton County Regional Planning Commission conditions.
Okay, thank you. Anyone like to second that? Okay. Hearing no second, I will second the motion. So if you could please call roll, please.
Mr. Eliff?
No.
Ms. DeBaggio?
No.
Mr. Boone?
Yes.
Mr. Gothard?
Yes.
Sorry, we don't have this every day.
Can I ask what the time means? What do you do in case of the time?
Right now, I've been on the commission for about 5 years, and this is the first time we've ever done it, so we are researching the bylaws now. So,
So I'll read the bylaws here. So it says a quorum of the commission shall consist of not less than 3 members, including alternate members appointed by the Board of Township Trustees. Such quorum may exercise the powers of the commission by majority vote, except that a minimum of 3 affirmative votes shall be required for the approval of any amendment or supplement to zoning text or zoning map. And then it goes on that the failure of any proposed amendment or supplement to receive a minimum of 3 affirmative votes shall constitute a recommendation against such an amendment or supplement, and the vote shall be so reported to the Township Trustees. So it would be a recommendation of denial, which will be reported to the Township Trustees.
so options for the applicant?
Well, we can discuss that. So the options to the applicant will obviously be to either withdraw their case or continue forward to the trustees, and the trustees would make the final decision on zone change.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So if we'll take a brief recess and let the room clear, and then we'll come back for the next case.
So we'll take about a 5-minute recess, and we'll hear the next case after that. Thank you. All right, we lost all of our audience now, so we'll reconvene and put the focus back on staff.
Thanks.
Just what they wanted to hear tonight.
That's right. Okay, this is case 2, 2018 Beachmont Plan update. This is actually case 2, 2018 LUP, which is land use plan. The request here is recommendation to the Board of Township Trustees approving this plan update. The trustees initiated the planning process on May the 3rd, 2018. As far as the history of this case, the original plan was adopted in 1996, so in some fashion. So since 1996, it was originally adopted as more of a corridor plan and a traffic access management safety plan. Over that time, numerous plans have been adopted for Beachmont Avenue, including a landscape plan, a vision plan, a downtown plan, and all the plans that you see here listed. Most of those are incorporated into our Anderson Township Comprehensive Plan, but we've been trying to merge all of these documents into one planning document for Beachmont Avenue. So moving forward, we'll have one consolidated Beachmont plan. So when a developer comes to us, we can show him him or her the one plan and not corridor plan, landscape plan, vision plan. Everything needs to be in one document so that we're coordinating development with one document, and residents and business owners all have one document. This started back in 2015. This was actually a recommendation from our previous comprehensive plan. We tried to do this in-house, and it got very complicated very quickly. So merging all these plans together. So then we decided to hire a consultant, KZF Design, to help us. They have long been our contracted engineer for Beachmont Avenue, so they know the history, and they were a part of the original 1996 plan. We had an open house in October of last year in 2017, and then the plan has been on our website for feedback and comment. We've also had numerous meetings with ODOT. Obviously, Beachmont Avenue, State Route 125 is their roadway and under their maintenance and authority. So it makes, we have a great working relationship with ODOT. They're very supportive of our planning projects, and we want to make sure that we're working together. We want to ensure they're supportive of our plans, because if they aren't supportive of our plans, well, obviously they can't be implemented. It's their roadway. So we have met with them on numerous occasions. We're working with them now on the access management safety project that you see going on Beachmont, consolidation of driveways. They added a turning lane into 8 Mile Road. They're working with the township on our downtown plan. Those two projects have actually merged together and went out to construction at the same time. So this plan keeps 4 main goals: improve the safety and reduce congestion, develop cross-access. Improve and cross-access is properties either connected via parking lots or in what we call an Anderson Access Way, and this is a dedicated connection between properties, and the goal has always been to tie properties to signalized intersections. So whether that's with new development, it's been a volunteer program to try to work with business owners to tie their properties together. So some of our efforts have been voluntary, some have been conditions of zoning approvals by this board, and that is still a goal of this plan. We kept the theme of the 6 neighborhoods of the plan. This came out from our original plan. Neighborhood 1 is the area coming out of Mount Washington as you go up to Salem Road. This neighborhood, all 6 neighborhoods have slightly different characteristics and feels and different recommendations, whether it is recommendations for the roadway, for sidewalks, or the character and style of the development, more residential in character versus more. We have our downtown area, which is the area of neighborhood 3, and then as you go further east, more of your big box, typical suburban style development. We picked out a couple of the cross sections that we've been working with ODOT, and the first slide here is Neighborhood 1. Again, this is the area coming out of Mount Washington. During our open house that we had, this is a more residential area. There are some homes, single-family homes in this area by Beach Acres Park. One of their challenges is that they have single-car driveways. There is no on-street parking in this area, so finding a place to park is difficult for them. There are also bicycle lanes coming out of Mount Washington, and they've tried different things of closing a lane off to allow for on-street parking, the outside lane, as long as it's not during your typical rush hour and high traffic times. So we worked with ODOT to come up with different cross-sections that would allow for on-street parking on one side of the roadway where there's room and where it's most convenient to the residents through there to allow for extra parking. This cross-section in particular shows a bicycle lane. It still shows the center turn lane, but it also shows an on-street parking. The share row with a bicycle would be in the same drive lane. It wouldn't be solely dedicated for the bicycle, but this cross-section allows for on-street parking. And this was something that the residents in that area were supportive of. They thought it was a good idea. Neighborhood 3, this cross-section again shows bicycle lanes in the drive aisle. This is an area that is adjacent to our downtown plan, or coming into Neighborhood 3 and Neighborhood 4, which are our downtown area. With the downtown plan, what's under construction now, the lanes have already been narrowed and the sidewalks were widened to more for pedestrians. This was an area that there wasn't enough room to have a dedicated bike lane, so we are showing a shared lane with the drive aisle. However, we will have transition areas that if you're uncomfortable riding in the road, you could ride on the sidewalk, so there would be transition areas. Your more advanced cyclists would stay out in the drive lane, but more novice cyclists or those that wanted to ride on the sidewalk, there would be transition areas to actually go onto the sidewalk. We tried to make all the improvements of the downtown plan within the existing right-of-way, so that's why we were so limited on lane widths. And then Neighborhood 6, this is the area that's further east. This actually shows a dedicated bike lane. So again, wanted to show you the recommendations from Neighborhood 1, where there may be on-street parking, to Neighborhood 2 and 3, where there would be shared bicycle lanes with the drive lane, and then as you progress east, where there is more right-of-way, there would be an actual dedicated lane for a bike lane. So these were recommendations from ODOT. We ran this by them. They were supportive. And those are the main differences. The design guidelines and the vision plan are fairly the same, pretty much the same as before. But these were the main differences coming out of the older plans. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Mr. Boone, we'll start with you.
You know, bike lanes on Beachmont Avenue, I know that we're required to do that from ODOT and everything, and I love bikes, I like all the bike trails that we're getting, but the center left turn lane and all the different, ingress, egress points along Beachmont, I just think it's extremely dangerous, and I've seen situations in my own family, been involved in situations where, you're turning left, say into Target or whatever, traffic might be stopped, and you turn, the bicyclist isn't stopping. They're not following the rules, and they're getting hit. And so when you see these shared lanes and lanes, it concerns me. Beachmont is such a challenging place to drive, and throw bicyclists into it. I don't know, I get a little nervous about that, and I love the idea of being able to bike all over the community, but I wish there was a way to maybe separate it a bit more, from the traffic, but that's just my opinion. I love how things are sectioned off, numbers 1 through 6, and I assume 3 is considered the downtown.
Yes.
The downtown area. And I know I've asked this before, I was be on the betterment beautification committee. And I know everyone in Anderson Township has brought this issue up, it's really beating the dead horse with it. The electrical lines, you know, just if we could solve that. I've heard $50 million estimate on what it would take to put those lines underground. But looking at it sectioned off into one through 6, you know, if we could look at, say, start with section 3, which is the downtown area, and maybe achieve that at some point, you know, and then move forward from that, you know, it wouldn't be obviously such a big hit at one time. I wish that could be addressed, because I think we can dress up Beachmont Avenue all we want, but until those lines and maybe the billboards are gone, you know, I think this is not going to be what we really want. And then on page 44, I love the design in the right bottom corner of the 2-story buildings. I think that is just wonderful. I'd love to see that all up and down Beachmont Avenue. I was hoping to see a little bit of that with the new development from Kroger. And they've got it like right on the corner. They've got kind of a facade that maybe shows a 2-story. But I really like that design. Do we have anyone at this point looking at putting in something like that on Beachmont, Paul?
We don't at this point in time. We're hoping that once the new development at the corner of Wolf Angle and Beachmont is open and is successful, which we fully think it will be the start of more demand. And it's getting the first one in the door, which is always the problem. And just getting, and with our capital improvements right now, with the widened sidewalks, the streetscape elements, the landscaping, trying to change perception of Beachmont can be a walkable downtown area. It's hard to change that perception, and it's going to take time, but we think, you know, over time that will change, and hopefully we'll attract more developments like this.
Also on that same page, it looks like you've got that kind of indoor-outdoor dining, kind of like you see at the new restaurant there, Bar Louie, there at the town center. Do you know if the new development at the corner, are they going to have that indoor-outdoor
Yes.
concept as well?
Yes.
Great.
Well, the kitchen, 1883. Is it 83? 1883. I get my years mixed up all the time. So, they will have an extensive patio, and they are very excited about using that.
I've seen a rendering.
I don't know. We haven't seen the final yet.
Yeah, not
You
final,
might
but-
have. Yeah, we haven't seen the final yet, whether it would be like Bar Louie, but they will definitely have a patio, and they're very excited about having an outdoor area. And then McAllister's Deli will also have outdoor seating. They're on the other,
Not necessarily garage.
not necessarily garage doors, right.
Do any of the places have a garage door type? At that corner, just outdoor, just patio?
Just outdoor patio.
And is there a plan there for any kind of, I know another thing, a couple things I advocated for on that committee I was on was some sort of like outdoor fire pit type area. I've seen those in other communities.
So, yes, I don't know that those plans have been finalized. We do know that Kroger owns the corner, and they will be programming that corner, and they'll also have their restaurant at that corner. So I think they want the corner to be very successful as well, and I think it will evolve over time. We are working with them to celebrate our 225th at putting some interpretive signage there. It's just a point of interest. We're also working with Kroger on Beachmont Avenue. They have these little pocket parks, so putting some type of art in those pocket parks, whether it be a mural or chalkboard art. Am I saying that correct?
Yeah, you're right.
So I think it's going to evolve as it opens, and it is at 100% occupancy, though. Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't think it's at 100%, but, yeah, it's 85, 90. Yes.
And then another huge opportunity, I know I just read the city of Hamilton just did this, but does it talk about in this plan anywhere, I didn't see it, the concept of an entertainment district? You know, we're allowed now state, the state legislature put forth the regulations where we can have outdoor consumption of alcohol as long as it's confined to a certain area.
I think the town center has discussed it in the past. I don't know if it's gone anywhere or not.
But there's no, obviously, that detail's not discussed.
Right. Not not in this plan.
Maybe I can state that, look into our entertainment district. In this planning here, but no, I think an entertainment district is something that, I know, like I said, Hamilton, I think it's gotten off to a really good start. I think you have to kind of fence up, paint areas where you can consume alcohol when you can.
Okay.
But I don't know if, again, I love this plan. I think this is great that you combine all these different elements into one plan. And I think this is excellent. I really enjoyed reading through this, and makes a lot of sense. But those are just a few of my thoughts.
I neglected to say it too. Sarah has been the project manager for this ever since we consulted the KZF Design. And Brad Bowers, actually, when he co-opted for our office, he started on the draft and came up with a great draft of consolidating on the plans. And so there's been a lot of work all the staff has put in on this.
Thank you. Ms.
Josh
DeBaggio?
Russo as well started.
First of all, Sarah, thank you very much. And I know, Paul, you had a little something to do with it, I'm sure, in your whole department. I agree that it is a wonderful document. I do have one more question. I'm going to call it .5, that whole area we were just talking about. And I understand it's a short little area down there on Beachmont. Is there anything to give any direction to that small section that is Anderson Township?
And Skytop.
It's not.
Actually, and that was not a focus of this plan and never has been, unfortunately, or fortunately. When the plan was initially, it was initially adopted in the late 90s, the focus was the congested area, which was from Salem out to the Claremont County line. That was really the point. We were seeing so many, the accident rate was so high, the signage clutter, it was actually detracting businesses. And so that was really the focus of the plan. And then the focus became a landscape plan, but it really wasn't down by the Skytop area. We did the landscaping, and then the vision plan, and then the downtown plan, of course. But that, you're right, that area wasn't necessarily the focus in the Beachmont plan, even though it is on Beachmont Avenue.
I have to say, I absolutely love the sidewalks working on Beachmont. It terrifies me sometimes when I watch some of these people, and they're totally oblivious. They've got their headphones on, they're just walking around, beating to the music, and I'm thinking, are you missing the cars that are just missing? So the sidewalk I absolutely love. I'm sure not all the businesses love the closing off of the drives. I happen to think it's a great idea. And I'm going to call it an alley. I know you just called them something else. Sorry, I just went back
That's all right.
to my mind. But we have one behind us, and it is a great way for us to avoid Beachmont and get to, something that we never have to hit Beachmont to go to it. It's really nice. But this is a wonderful, from my perspective, great way to sell Anderson Township. We first came here, I remember my husband driving me through and he said, yeah, I'm not so sure about this area. We ended up here, and I'm glad we did. It looks completely different in the 7 years that we've lived here, and this tells us exactly where we're going from here. So I love it. I think it's a great document.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Ella?
But I agree with all the comments that my colleagues made, really good insights. I think the plan combining, it's a no-brainer. I really think it'll make it a lot more user-friendly. And I was just so impressed with the document. It was, like the breakdown. I like that it's got a lot of pictures. There's not an overabundance of text in it, so I wonder what they're doing here over by, Panera and stuff. Just flip to it, see what's going on. I was really impressed with it, and I think we got lucky here because we've had KZF so long, because sometimes I think I think KZF probably knows Beachmont as well as any of us do by this point, and so you guys did a really good job managing that, Sarah, for sure, to get a good product out of KZF. They're a good company, and, you know, I'll say something that Mr. Boone said about the power lines, and those are some pretty good-looking power poles in the pictures there, but I do think the township, I don't know if this was just coincidence or not, but when they put those tall towers in along over by the downtown area, I mean, it really did change that a little bit, I thought. It took a lot of the clutter and moved it up maybe where it's not so noticeable. I mean, if you look at, like Sycamore did accomplish some underground utility location around the mall there, but they had such a tremendous tax base to do that. It did help that a lot. I agree that would be a nice goal. I just don't know how practical. It's so expensive. But I think these improvements and the downtown improvements are just really exciting, and I'm a big fan of the plans that you guys have put together. Thank you.
I get to go last, that's great. So, want to commend staff on that also. I think it's very well put together, very visual, which is easy to show potential developments as they move in. And thanks for, my note was, why is there no dedicated bike lane in neighborhood 3, but there is in 2 and 4, so thanks for clarifying that. Other than that, I think it's a great document, putting it all in one place as the township moves forward. So if there's any comments from the audience, we'd be entertaining that. Please state your name, address, and affiliation to the case.
I'll save my comments for later.
Okay. They're not on public record, so no. So with that, entertain a motion. Entertain a motion to move it on along, right?
Yes.
Someone make a motion, please.
Well, I'd be glad to make a motion that the commission recommend to the trustees that the plan be approved.
Second. Okay, thank you. Could you please call roll, please?
Mr. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Ms. DiBiagio? Yes. Mr. Boone?
Yes.
Mr. Gottlieb?
Yes. With that, anything looking at agenda for next month?
Probably. So please mark your calendars.
Great. I know summer's coming up, so it's going to be a little...
Yeah, it'll be on June 26th. We'll be back on our regular fourth Monday schedule now. So,
with that, entertain a motion to adjourn. All right, second? Second. All right, all in favor? All opposed? Great. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.